then we chat. So
cool. Lekker.
well, it gets very real when you own property in rural areas that have been the targets of looters and very little support, if any, from the state. That's the position that Jason McCormick is in. Jason, just give us a little bit of background. The McCormick family is well known as property developers. How long have you guys been at it?
39 years next March as McCormick Property Development. Always focused in the rural areas, particularly the homelands. My dad was the first guy to really focus on them. He actually did what we believe was the first broad-based BEE scheme in 1987 in Guyana. And yeah, we've always been focused on the homelands, and because in the early days the townships were too hot to develop. We've obviously now been focused on the townships once they became more peaceful, and we find ourselves here today.
And you've also got exposure on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange.
Yeah, certainly. That is Exemplar Retail. We listed a portfolio of 20 properties in 2018 in June. And yeah, so that's our listed entity. The majority of the development still done through the unlisted company, although we have our first two developments within Exemplar itself. So actually doing the developments in the fund.
So how many shopping centers are we talking about within the group?
So in terms of developed over the time, I think we're on 68. In terms of those that are still owned by, or now by Exemplar, 23 currently. In outside the fund, we have a couple that aren't in the fund for various reasons. So yeah, it's in terms of Exemplar though, it's 23 currently.
And what's happened in the last week?
South Africa's been turned on its head, to be honest. Yeah, never in my wildest dreams could I've imagined what has happened. I studied business economics at university, and I think it would have been more appropriate having gone to Sandhurst, to be honest. The onslaught that we faced by what we believe to be ex-military, it's a coordinated attack with serious armaments across the portfolio. Yeah, it's been. I'm speaking to you now with probably a couple of hours sleep over the past 3 days. So yeah, it's been a hell of an experience. Something that we never expected to happen. Where we currently stand though, and why I'm happy to be speaking to you is that things are now a lot more under control. I wasn't confident to speak to anyone until we knew exactly what was going on the ground at the moment. Things are a lot more calm. We still have got a big threat at our flagship mall of Tembisa, which we opened in 2020 under the pandemic, and we are still facing a big threat there. But otherwise, things seem to have calmed down. I feel the tide has turned. We have had, in terms of Exemplar, 5 malls that have been damaged to varying degrees. The 3 in KZN, which all got torched to various degrees as well. But the damage hasn't been as bad as we originally thought now that we've started the cleanup. So yeah, fortunately, it's not a massive part of the portfolio. We will endure, we will survive. We certainly believe that we'll be able to get these malls back up and running in a couple of months. Obviously, the tenants trade incredibly well with us, and they're desperate to get back in trading. So the sooner we can get them up and running, the sooner we can support the tenants, who obviously also going to take a massive hit, not just on the capital that they're going to have to reinvest, in their supply chains, in their but to get that moving through. So yeah, it's going to take a coordinated effort, and so it's three in KZN and 2 in Gauteng. Our other flagship, Chris Hani Crossing, which we own, Exemplar owns 50% with Redefine. That has been all over the news with the looting over a couple of days. Some fires. We looked at aerial photography today. It looks like about 8 to 10,000, I would gut feel say will need to have roofs replaced and be rebuilt, but certainly not the whole mall, which is positive. We look for whatever positivity we can in these times, and then Diepkloof Soweto, less extensive. We'll get that up and running in, I won't say no time, but a short few months.
You said it was with military precision, ex-military people who've coordinated the attacks. Just take us through that so that we from the outside can understand what you've been going through.
In particular, the two malls in Gauteng, Alex Mall on Tuesday night had a gang of about 2,000 people that had been incited. Obviously, we believe that the common man is being used by a very small group of people. We have managed to catch a number of these instigators from KwaZulu-Natal. So they are definitely outsiders that have come to instigate people. And allegedly, they're saying, we're going to give you protection. You're not going to be shot at because we're going to protect you, and you guys can go and do the shopping. As soon as we've breached, they set fires and shoot at our security. It's high caliber stuff. We've had tactical teams, and I'm no expert in military, so this is what's coming from the tactical guys, that they've been hit, shot at with R1s, R4s, that kind of military grade weapon. So yeah, so from our side, that firefight lasted a couple of hours. We were shooting at them with rubber bullets. Eventually, birdshot was being used, shooting at their feet and everything else. And what turned the tide there, I'm afraid to say, is the taxi industry came in to support us, because they've got a massive rank and they realized their business was going to be jeopardized. They came in and actually started firing the odd live round. In no time, that disabled that one. The next night was hectic at Mall of Tembisa. We faced a huge onslaught with, as expected, they tried to attack our fire suppression system, water tanks, fire pumps first. So the intention wasn't to come in and loot. The intention was to loot and then to burn, to make sure that our sprinklers didn't work. We didn't have water to put them out in Teku Plaza. In KZN, they did the same, disabled all our water tanks, our fire pumps, stole our fire hose reels, used all our extinguishers, extinguished in the parking lot, and so we had nothing to fight the fires with. So yeah, fortunately they built with firewalls, and a lot of the fires were contained, but there's no doubt, you don't do that kind of thing without having a proper planned attack strategy. It wasn't just people coming to loot. There was a definite intention to damage our malls.
Have you lost anybody?
One. Not ourselves, from the security side, unfortunately. But yeah, fortunately only one thus far.
But it sounds like sedition. It sounds like something that was planned to disrupt the country or to destabilize South Africa.
It was planned very well. There's no doubt about it. This whole thing has been organized beyond any level I think that any of us could have expected. There's no doubt. If you look, it's I don't know. People are saying it's tantamount to treason, and I tend to agree. If you look at what they are looking to disrupt supply chains, they are looking to, it's been very well thought out, very well planned, and obviously our malls are the final. The final step in the distribution chain for a lot of the FMCG and everything else. And yeah, so we're just part of a big grand plan. As much as it hurts us that we've been attacked, given by the same community that we've worked so closely with. A lot of the communities are partners in our malls, and you can't get too emotional about it, because it's not about us. It's about a bigger plan that we just somehow are a part of a bigger plan. So yeah, there's definitely, it's not just, poverty. We're sitting on a powder keg. There's no doubt about it. The inequality, all of that. You come out of COVID, the unemployment, all of that. People were hungry, and it didn't take a lot to it was very volatile. So it was, if it wasn't Zuma's arrest, it was going to be something else at some stage. That's my opinion. But obviously, to get it to the extent that it has got to, the intel that we've got is these inciters are literally going from community to community. They've got areas that they're looking to target. They incite and say, we're going to protect you. They breach, they get the community in to start looting. They then move off to the next. They are doing diversions. They're pulling the police, the pops, the SAPs elsewhere, and then they hit a mall here. And then they do something else elsewhere, so they have to move off. Then they sit here. It's been, yeah, because they've done it in such a coordinated fashion, they've really stretched the security services. And as I say, this is the reason I'm sitting on about 5-6 hours sleep over the last 3 nights, is because we are having to coordinate effectively a civilian task force, a civilian army, to try and help protect ourselves. Because unfortunately, with all of it going on, the SAPs and SANDF has just been stretched in every which way, and so obviously we've had to put in significant steps to look after our assets, look after our people.
And presumably, those steps are going to be permanent, given that this was coordinated and could be repeated.
There is a lot of learning that we've taken out of this. So certainly in the rebuild program, the malls that we are rebuilding and the malls that we are going to continue developing will be built very differently in terms of the security measures that we are going to be putting in place. Because, yeah, as I say, we've learned a lot over the past week.
What about your shopping centers in rural areas? What's been the experience there?
I love the rural areas. I absolutely love the people. I love developing them. There is where you make the biggest difference, because people aren't having to spend 100 Rand on a round trip to go into town. You make a significant difference. And the rural areas have been amazing. They have formed human chains. They have protected us in these areas. They haven't allowed themselves to be caught up in all of this. That's where the bulk of our assets still standing remain, in these areas. So we've got 18 that are still operating and are almost ops normal. So the rural areas have been fine. It's the Gauteng townships and case was heavy. There are 2 malls in rural KZN that did get hit, but up here the rural stuff is all pumping, trading well.
Jason, one hears from, in our community, the business community is very large and diverse, and we hear from, particularly in the rural areas, the smaller towns, Moy River completely trashed, excepting for perhaps three businesses that are still standing, and they've been very heavily defended. Wartburg, one of our community members, said, you can't believe what's happened to our town. Bergville in a similar situation. Not so bad down the road at Winterton, and you can go on and on and on. Lidgerton doesn't exist anymore, almost. Howick even. All of these incidents. Have you not had any of your shopping centers in those areas that have been affected at all? And maybe is this because they're shopping centers and not high street stores?
No, not at all, Alec. Maybe I didn't speak correctly. Our centers, all 4 of our centers in KZN have been affected, including 2 rural ones. So other than KZN, the rural ones haven't been. But the Ezekeni in Ladysmith, outside Ladysmith, and Teku Plaza outside Newcastle have both had significant damage.
The kind of damage that we see on television.
Yes.
Is there anything left in the shopping centers?
Yes. The parking, the paving, the main superstructure, some of the roofs. I would say probably 20-30% of those have been completely gutted with fire. We haven't been able to get in there yet. It's still too volatile. We haven't done the assessment. We haven't sent in assessors to go and do a proper assessment. From what we can see, there's significant damage to Ezekeni, Teku, in Newcastle is actually a very successful shopping centre and was due for a massive rebuild and expansion. So I suppose this gives us a clean slate to expand it as we want when the time comes, when we're able to.
So you will be doing that. You will not be pulling out. You'll be reinvesting.
I am an African, and I believe the project that we've got changes lives. The reason we're driven to do what we do is we fundamentally change where we operate. And it is just unfortunate that we were sitting, as I say, on a powder keg that allowed this to happen. But there's absolutely no doubt that we will continue doing what we're doing, because at the end of the day, we do change the communities. And I believe in South Africa. I love this country, and I'm committed to continuing. Obviously, we're not going to do it. We're smart enough to take necessary precautions and do things slightly different, or not significantly differently going forward, to make sure that if this were to happen again, that we've got measures in place. And there are a number of things we're looking at currently. So when we do the rebuilds, we will have those measures in place. There's no doubt that the closed malls were easier to defend than the open plaza shopping centres, where people could just literally go in through the shop fronts off the parking lot once they'd reached the perimeter. So obviously that's something to consider. The perimeter fencing, those barriers, those will all get looked at. There's a number of things we're looking at as to how to avoid something like this going forward. But obviously, the working with the security forces is essential. And unfortunately, they were very slow to react early on, and that was the first four to go were all the KZN ones, and we had absolutely no support. In Edendale, we've got a SAPS 500 meters down the road. The day before this all started, they shuttered it up and they went on strike. They said, "We know it's coming. We didn't get a pay rise, and we're out of here." So we didn't have a single SAPS on site to assist. So that allowed that mall to get looted unabated. People celebrating in the streets with their shopping for 2-3 days, as they slowly, bit by bit, took it out. Because we couldn't get firefighters in there. The fire trucks tried to get in there. They were shot at. So we lost, I would say, there probably not that much, 2,000, 3,000 square meters of those shopping centers. As I say again, fortunately they did have firewalls in place. Sprinklers weren't damaged in that one, so that managed to suppress the fire, and the damage wasn't too bad there. But as I say, obviously, unfortunately for the poor tenants, their stores were trashed. They lost every single bit of stock they had, their shop fittings, their point of sale, everything. There's nothing left in there. So
what about in Pietermaritzburg?
Yeah, that's Edendale is Maritzburg. Edendale is Pietermaritzburg. That's where we had the issue with the SAPs not being on site. I went as far as to try and get a forestry helicopter that does those water bombing in to come and help us put out the fires, because we couldn't get fire trucks to the site. But they are apparently by law not allowed to drop on buildings, because the water force can cause damage to human life. So yeah, as someone said, we're just sitting back and watching the braai. But
Jason, what are you going to be doing with it, with the insurers? Are you insured? Are your tenants, will they be reimbursed in some way, or is it their issue?
Yeah, Alec, the insurance is obviously a big question on everyone's mind. Does Sasria have enough of a kitty to cover all of this, or has it all been plundered? No one really knows. They are saying yes, they have got sufficient. There's no doubt that the numbers I've seen are not what the damage that's out there. I think people are underestimating the damage completely. I heard someone say, or the Premier of KZN said there's 1,000 jobs that have been lost in KZN. And I was like, well, there's 3,500 in our portfolio alone. And that's just 4 shopping centers. So, what's happening on the ground, I don't know, I don't know if everyone is fully aware of the full extent of everything. But in terms of coming back to the insurance, we are fully insured from both a SASRIA and our main policy. Where it ultimately sits, we haven't got to that yet. There is a fine line between SASRIA, where SASRIA stops and ends, and what is civil unrest and what is vandalism and looting. So we are working obviously very closely with our brokers at the moment to formulate our claims so that we can finalize and submit them. But we don't know the full extent of the damage at the moment. We are, as of today, starting with the structural analysis of Edendale in Pietermaritzburg, and the other shopping centres, just to see what actually needs to be replaced, and starting to quantify the cost of the rebuild program. But as I say, we are fully insured. Let's just hope that there's enough money in the kitty and they're sufficiently underwritten to pay for whatever they need to, because obviously we've been paying insurance for 40 years and have never really had major claims. And obviously, there are a lot of claims going to be coming in concurrently. So one just hopes that there is sufficient in the kitty to settle all the claims.
The kind of to wrap up with, people in KwaZulu-Natal have, in the most affected areas, have been finding each other. They've been creating community bodies to protect their assets, protect their suburbs. They have a very low regard for the security services who are missing in action. You've explained that they were missing in action in at least 2 of your malls that you've gone into some detail. How is this going to change the approach? If you are a taxpayer, you are a ratepayer, and in your hour of need, whether you're a citizen or a business owner, you can't rely on those who you are giving that money to. In other words, the return doesn't seem to be there. How are you thinking about that?
Well, certainly, it's the worst return on investment that one can ever make, is paying rates and taxes currently. But by its very nature, your rates and taxes is based on the value of an asset, and currently those assets have a negative value. So as far as I'm concerned, and legally, I'm not fully appraised as to what we legally are still obliged to pay, but those assets don't have a value. So if you really do the calculation, they aren't earning an income. And I do not believe that we should be liable for rates and taxes, because, as I say, at the moment they are sitting, the ones in Maritzburg and Teku and eSekheni are significantly damaged, sitting in ashes. And I can't justify paying rates and taxes to municipalities that gave us no support, and something that's literally quite like it's a wasteland. There's no value. So. But for the rest, obviously, we play by the rules. We are willing ratepayers everywhere. We will continue to wherever we legally are obliged to, even if it is in Edendale. And the legal stance is that we have to pay rates and taxes. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but we will continue to pay rates and taxes and do whatever we are legally obliged to. Coming back to the community support remains incredible. The people in Diepkloof, now currently Chris Hani Crossing in Vosloorus, people are Edendale, the communities are helping us clean up. They're volunteering, they're supporting us. They've been wanting to form a human shield around Tembisa, but given the severity of the attack that was on us 2 nights ago, we've urged everyone to stay away, because we don't want human casualties, the ordinary people caught in the crossfire of something that is far bigger than they could handle. So yes, we still got a huge support from the communities. We've always worked very closely with them. As I said, there's a lot of community trusts that are shareholders in the assets that we have out in these communities, a lot of local shareholders, huge amount of local businesses, a lot of mums and pops. And these are the people that are going to be affected. We've worked out that currently, in terms of the shopping centres that are not operational, it's 13,800 jobs that are currently at risk, or won't be, they aren't employed. Now that's up to 100,000 dependents are dependent on that income. So and something else that someone hasn't thought about: how's government going to pay out grants? Grant payouts happen in a huge at our malls, and I don't know what the contingency plans are there. How are they physically going to get the money into the hands of the people that now suddenly do not have a facility to draw it? There's no banks, there's no nothing. So these are all questions that are going to need to be dealt with, because those are real issues for these areas going forward.
And supports your thesis that it's been very well coordinated and organized. But do these communities around your shopping centers actually know the truth?
No.
Are they
No,
not?
no, absolutely not. They are unfortunately desperate, undereducated. They are, they don't understand, I do not believe, because they, for a bag of milli meal, they have, and whatever they could grab, they are literally going to be facing the harshest winter that they've ever faced, because there's literally no employment. They're going to have to spend more money on taxis to get to wherever the closest shops are. We all know what happens in a monopoly is, if you've got one shop, suddenly bread is 25 Rand or 30 Rand or whatever it is. So not only are they going to spend more money on transport to get elsewhere to go and do their basic shopping, those goods and services are going to cost them more if they can get to them. And so at the end of the day, they didn't consider this. There's no doubt about it, because I've got no doubt they didn't fully understand what was behind it. Otherwise, they would have had perhaps made a different choice. But as I say, it was a powder keg, and they were incited into this and promised they'd be protected, and they would get free food, televisions, and everything else. And without any other option, they've got nothing else to do. Huge unemployed youth, and unfortunately, if they have got a lot of time to be unproductive, they can use that time to be productive in ways that are certainly not productive for the economy.
But
that's what we saw.
But what about those communities where they did create human shields, where they did try to protect their shopping centers? Are they aware?
100%. I think so, because there we've got community leaders that are on the right side. There's definitely community leaders that are on the wrong side, that are behind this, and have perhaps misled their people. But yeah, we've got a number of shopping centers outside of the other. I was speaking specifically in Tembisa, where we declined. We've told the guys to stay away. But in a lot of most of our other areas, they are literally at the gates, protecting them all. The taxi guys, our communities, the local CPFs. Yeah, they've been fantastic. It's been absolutely, hands off our mall. Listen, Tsakani Mall, we've got huge community support, because we haven't seen the threat of that level of military precision attack on us. So there's been great. They've helped us a hell of a lot. So yeah, it's each one on its own. But certainly on the 18 that are still standing, there is huge community support around us, and they're playing a massive role in keeping the rest of it at bay.
Are they outside of Zulu areas?
These townships up in Gauteng are certainly not homogenous. It's a mix of people. We anticipated that Vosloorus Katlehong were going to get hit, because there's a significant amount of Nguni speaking people, particularly Zulus, in those townships. The closest townships to KZN as you come to Johannesburg. So we anticipated issues there, but certainly if you look at where all the issues have happened, as you get in the Khali's Ridge north of Pretoria, basically north of that, it's all been quiet, it's all been calm. So in Gauteng in particular, it is. I'm not going to reduce this to ethnicity. In Gauteng, obviously in KZN, it is well known that KwaZulu is
KwaZulu.
And so yeah, but up here it's I think I believe it's been very well funded, and there's a lot of money that has gone into arming and paying people to be involved. And I'm talking serious money. That's so this thing has been planned, coordinated for a while. We believe, but I suppose those really in the know. Obviously, we've got a lot of people in the communities, a lot of informants that have been telling us what they have heard, what the stories are. I'm sure that those in the state security agency, everyone else have that same information if it is credible. I don't want to get caught up in rumors and speculation. Obviously, at the moment, we are just trying to protect what we've got and focus on rebuilding what has been damaged.